this video, I'm going to dive into MCP, a brand new and very powerful way to work with AI agents within your automations. I'm going to break down what MCP actually is in a way that anyone can understand. And then I'll show you the power of MCP by building a Slack AI agent in Make that's connected to Notion. So let's jump in. First, let's cover what MCP actually is within the AI world and AI agents. Now, MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, which means not much to most people. So let's actually dig into what that means. There are tons of videos out there that get into super detail. I'm going to give you the high level version because I think this is the easiest way to explain it. Hopefully this is clear. So normally what you would need to do if you're going to build an AI agent, and I'm going to show you through Make, but this would also work in like N8N or some other tools. You would typically need to have some type of scenario that would have a chat instance. You could use email, you could use Telegram. So I just have Slack, and I'm going to show you how to actually build this. And then you'd have the AI agent tool, and then you'd have some type of response. So this is, listening for responses. So you'd message a Slack channel. The AI agent would do something with that message, and then it would respond with some type of response back. Now, let's say you wanted to connect to a tool like Notion, which is pretty much like a project management tool. You can treat it as a CRM. It's very, very powerful. You would, and I've done this, actually need to build out a ton of different scenarios and define what every single one does. So you would maybe need to say, and these are just examples, but you would maybe need to say, create a Notion page or Notion database item, read the Notion page or Notion database item, update it, delete it. And you would be clicking and connecting every single one of these. And then these are just sort of like showing that you would need to create potentially 10, 20, 30 of these, depending on what you actually needed to do. Now, why MCP is so magical is because it will take this experience. So, we have a ton of different actions and it turns it into this. So now we're pretty much connecting the same top level message, listening for messages. We have the AI agent connection and configuration, and then a Slack message back. It responds with a message. But instead of connecting all of those different scenarios, like sub scenarios, all you need to do is point it to the MCP server. And the MCP server says, hey, here's all the stuff that I can do as Notion. And it's going to say, I can search for databases. I can search for pages. I can create pages. I can update pages. I can delete them. I can change users. And so it pretty much gives a giant list. And I'll show you that here in a minute, a giant list of what's possible. And then the AI agent just chooses and decides. So now instead of configuring everything, you can then say, hey, go create a task in the project task database. The AI agent will listen to the MCP server and say, what's possible? And it would then ultimately decide that it could create a task. It would create that task in the database and then respond and say, hey, I just created a task. Here's a link to that task. But in general, this is changing the landscape of how we build automations, especially like AI agents, how quickly we can build them. And you actually see that when we build it. We're going to build this thing in just a few minutes. Now, this becomes even more powerful. I just showed you Notion, but let's say you have an AI agent that you also want to have it connected to HubSpot, which is like a CRM. So you store maybe sales deals, like deals and pipeline, all that kind of stuff. You'd want it to connect to 3 other tools, Shopify, like who knows? There's so many options. So instead of doing something like this, this is a realistic configuration with sub scenarios. So you're going to have your AI agent, and you're going to have all these different sub scenarios coming off of here that you would need to actually configure, write little prompts for, and say what they can do. And the scenario would need to actually execute on that and then return. And this with MCP, pretty much you just connect it to another MCP server. So HubSpot has their own MCP server. You can give it access to it. And then you might have a message that comes in that then says, hey, what's the deal? What active deals do I have right now within HubSpot? And the AI agent would say, hey, I have access to HubSpot, and it would ask HubSpot's MCP server, can I do this? It would identify that it could, it would return the information, and it would message it back to you. So if you're looking for these servers, I just Googled this. This was the first site that I grabbed, but you can type in any tool, and then you have a list of like a bunch of MCP servers. So some of these are created by other people, and they manage them, and then some are the actual official ones. So you can see Notion. I typed in Notion up here, and there's an actual official one. So usually it's going to give you a bunch of extra community built ones, but I would probably stick with the official one, which makes the most sense. It'll give you access to the URL, like what the MCP URL is. You don't really need to know much besides it's going to be able to connect with the AI agent, which I'll show you here in a minute. You can also go to the repo. Usually there's more information in the repo. So for example, this one shows you the authentication you need to do, like the integrations within Notion, which I'm going to cover here in a minute. So really, if you wanted to add a new MCP server, you come over here to one of these sites. Again, this is one of, I think, many. You do a search and you try to find the official MCP server, and then you can use that within the AI agent. Cool. So let's actually start building this thing. So we're going to start from scratch. We're going to build a Slack AI agent within Make that connects to Notion. So we'll be able to actually message Slack and say, hey, what active projects do I have? We could say create a new project, and it should be able to do all of those things. So let's jump in. I created a blank scenario to get started, and there's going to be some configuration, but you'll see how fast we can get this spun up versus the alternative, the old way of what we need to do, which I actually have a video on creating an AI agent within Slack. I have a couple of them. So go check those out if you haven't seen them, because then you can kind of see the old way of doing it, and you can see the power of switching over to an MCP version. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is connect to Slack, and we're going to the Slack module, and then we want to grab our watch new events, which is a trigger that will pretty much sit there and listen for any new message within a channel, is ultimately what it does. And I have a few webhooks created, but I'm going to create a new one for this example. Let me pull this over so you can actually see it. Let's call it new 2. I think I'm on, I don't know how many new ones I'm on. Actually, here, let's call my Slack MCP webhook. I don't know what you're going to talk about. Event type, there's a bunch of different options. You could do private channel message, new channel message. So we want to do new channel message. The connection to Slack is super easy. You would click add. It would pop up a window that you just log in and say, yes, connect. Straightforward. It comes back and it's connected. No big deal. And then you would choose your channel. So I'm going to choose AI MCP, which is the one I created for this demo. And the magic of Make and Slack automatically connects our webhook to Slack, which is great because we don't have to do a bunch of copy and pasting. So this is perfect. So now let's do a quick run. And when you're testing this, you just click run now and it'll start listening. So you can see it's sitting here waiting for an event. Then we can jump over to our channel, which I created here, and say, hello world, which is the thing everyone always says. We come back over to Make and we can see that it went through. So it's sitting there listening. We sent a message. The webhook went from Slack to Make, and the scenario then triggered and accepted that message. And you can see our text right here. So hello world, which is great. So perfect. That's what we need. I will add a caveat. It does sometimes take a few minutes. So if you connect this and the message isn't going through, I do notice that I've had to like save and refresh a few times on both sides. And it can take a couple minutes for, I think, that webhook to maybe get fully propagated. I'm not exactly sure, but it should work if you connect it that way. Cool. So now we have messages in. Now we really just need to add an AI agent. So the AI agent from Make is very powerful. It's new. They've added it recently. And we can add MCP servers to it. So if I add the module and go inside of it, we need to do a little bit of configuration. So first, let's go create agent. And it's just going to ask some questions. Mine's already filled in, but you click add and you just give it a name. That's pretty much all I need to do. And then there'll be some configuration. I'll show you how to get to the configuration here in a couple minutes. Then we're going to give it a name. So let's do Slack AI agent and then model. I'll just do medium for now, so we don't need a bunch of tokens, but I would switch it to GPT-5 if I was going live. And then we give it a system prompt. So this prompt is really the core system prompt for what the AI agent is doing. And I've already created one, so you have to watch me think and type, but it pretty much is just something basic. You know, your helpful assistant who's helping a team in Slack. You have access to the team's Notion account, always respond in a friendly tone. Really basic. I would probably give it access. Like the more I added, I would probably add like, you know, you have access to Notion, you have access to HubSpot, just so it gives it a little direction in what is possible within the AI agent. So once we save that, we have our configuration for our base agent. And now we actually need to configure the MCP servers as well as the specific within this scenario. So the MCP servers, you see nothing's popped up here. So we're going to go back up to configure. It's going to open a new window. And this is where we're going to have access to actually add our MCP servers. So you can see this is the prompt that we created for the system, like the core system prompt for the AI agent. But we want to now add an MCP server. So again, typically what you would need to do without the MCP server, you would be in system tools and you'd probably need to create, I don't know, 5 to 10 sub scenarios or 20, like however many you want for actual actions that the AI agent can do. And then you would go here and click add, you'd add the sub scenario, and it'd be a lot of clicking and adding sub scenarios, like a lot, like it takes a lot of work. So if we go to MCP, we now can throw in a server and it will start giving access to what you can do. Now, I've already connected to Notion, so you can kind of see what this looks like. But let me pull this up, and you can I scoot this over? Let me just hide my face. And you can see Make already has a bunch of MCP servers configured. So these are all things that you could just connect and say, hey, you have access to Asana, you have access to Intercom and PayPal, and it could start acting on your behalf. You could ask it questions, you could have it charge payments. Again, you need to make sure you configure your prompts correctly, but the idea is you're not pushing buttons all over the place to connect all these. So Notion wasn't in here as an example. So I needed to add a custom Notion server. So let me just go ahead and create one from scratch so you can see. So I would come over to Notion. I would grab the remote server here. We have two options. I think just one's probably we'll just grab the first one here and we just throw the URL in. That's kind of it. And then the API access key, this is going to be something that you're going to have to look per MCP server and see what they require. And for Notion specifically, I'm not sure. It says it somewhere, but you don't actually have to put a key in because it's going to use OAuth and it'll pop up and have you just log in as Notion, which is cool. So I'll leave this blank. I'll click save and this page pops up to connect. So I have my free account that I created for Notion for my demo. I say I accept make.com and click continue. And that was it. It verified it. This is a new connection. It now shows me all the things I can do. I could uncheck these if I don't want the tools accessible. I'll just leave them all accessible for now. But you can see all the stuff now that I didn't have to configure. I can search, I can fetch, I can create pages, I can update pages, I can get comments, I can get users, get data, update databases. It's super cool. So now that this is connected, now the AI agent has access to it and we are going to be flying. So once I come back over here, if I close this, if I open it back up, the MCP server should show up. Choose my agent again. I actually didn't save it. Choose my agent. All right, so now that we have our Slack AI agent connected, we can see the MCP server is already connected. So we have Notion in here. I think we can open it and probably see all the stuff we can do, which is fantastic. And now we can actually configure the scenario with this Slack agent. So we want to grab some of this data down here. So first we're going to grab the thread ID, which we can grab from Slack. So you can see our options are over here from, if I hide my head again, our options are over here. So we can grab it from our previous Slack module back here, and we should have thread ID. Now Slack specifically doesn't have something called thread ID. I don't think so. I think it's called timestamp, if I'm correct. So there's a thread timestamp, but it's actually this timestamp, which is what Slack uses. And it will make sure that all the messages within the thread stay together, and it will respond back to that same thread, which is kind of the idea. And then we need to actually give it a prompt, like something to do. So our first message, I'm just going to paste in what I've been using, just so you don't have to watch me type or think about what I'd put in there. And there's a few styling items that I'll cover here in just a second, but the idea is we're pretty much just sending it the message from Slack and saying, hey, here's the message that I just got from Slack. You should figure out what to do with it, and then we'll have the final step, which will be respond with the action that it took. Now, when I click show advanced settings down here, there's a few additional items, and one is this additional system instructions, because what I have found is that if I just give it this message and let the AI agent do whatever it wants with it, it actually responds a lot of times with like markdown and styling that we don't want. So I've put the additional styling instructions up here that just kind of tell it how to respond. So it's pretty much saying like, hey, respond to plain text, no markdown, no styling, because it was giving some like super weird styling and messing things up. And it just says, use bullets for bullet points. And this helps it just direct it in the styling. So we'll save this. And then we want to have Slack. And we're going to create a message, and we just want it to respond with the output from our make agent. So we'll grab the channel from our Slack. Let's scoot over so you can see it. And then the text is, for now, we're just gonna do the response. So we'll just give it the response from the AI agent. Again, this is where we said, hey, format it for a Slack message, whatever you say, format for a Slack message. The response should be that. And that's about it. So we'll save and save the whole thing. Oops, which piece do we miss? And the error was from, I had the wrong text, so we'll throw in the text in here. Save, and now it's all set. Cool, so now that we have it saved, let me jump over to Notion real quickly and show you what we're actually going to have in Notion. And I created this sample team space, and it's super basic. I just used the basics out of what Notion gives you to create a test project database. So you can see it has some test projects in here that it created for me. And the other one was the test CRM. And again, this is just dummy data that Notion created when I generated this database. So the idea is we can now use Slack to ask questions about our Notion database. And before we actually go over to Slack to do a message, I remembered one last thing we need to do, which is set up this filter. If we don't set up this filter to check for Slack bots, then it will have an infinite loop. So it'll reply to the thread, and then thread will start a new thread, and then it just talks to each other, and it would go on forever. So we just want to see if the bot does not exist, then it can continue. So we're looking for a bot ID, which it'll send it, and we say it does not exist, and then it will only send messages from a user, not a bot. All right, now we can finally start testing. So we have our filter here. So we're only going to push actual user messages through, and we'll ignore bot messages, and we click run once, and we'll wait for new data. And it's just going to sit here and listen for new message. Let's come over to our Slack channel, and we'll type in something like, what are my active test projects? And we'll send it. Come over to our integration. You can see it triggered it. The AI agent is thinking and doing something, and then it finishes. I will say I cut that piece out, but it does take a minute or two. So I don't know if that's the like Notion, if that's the AI agent, what that is, but there's definitely a bit of a time for it to wait. But let's come back over here and we can say, what are my test projects? Here's a quick rundown of the test projects that are still active, not marked as done. And it pulled out our new project, quarterly sales planning, public launch of iOS app. Come over to our projects, test projects, and that's what we have. Now let's actually try creating, so we have our test projects, but let's actually try creating a entry into our CRM. So we have contact name, company email, phone, status. And just to show you the power of it, let's do, I need to turn it on first. So it's listening. Since we're in our test mode, we'll ignore all the old data and we'll say something like, please create a new contact in my test CRM called John Doe with an email of john@acme.com. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So please create a new contact in my test CRM called John Doe with an email of john@acme.co. Click run. We can see it triggered our scenario. Our AI agent's going and sitting and thinking about what it should do, has access to Notion. It's deciding which of the operations it should be running, and it's going to execute something and respond. So finished. Let's run back and see what it did. It said new contact to test CRM, contact John Doe, email. You can view it here. So that's great. It even gave us a link. The link is John Doe, our test CRM. There's John Doe. So we could have had the additional information. But ideally, you see the power of this. I configured none of this. So normally this would have been a sub scenario, many sub scenarios that I would have had to create to connect to Notion and have it create these. And all I did was give it the URL, and the AI agent took over. So it's super magical and very, very cool. And then the final step here is really giving it the full history of the Slack chat. So this one only sends it one message at a time. If you wanted to extend it and actually send the full history of the Slack chat, you would need to add Slack. I can just show you real quick so you have it. And you have to do a custom API call unless, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I couldn't figure out how to get the history through just the typical Slack module. So if you want to add the Slack history in here, we would grab the history endpoint. And a lot of this was really just quick research before this video, just Googled, how to get history, and I can connect through the conversation, get the history. All it needed was the channel ID and a limit. So we'll add that in the query string. So we just need, you see it, there we go, channel, and then we're gonna give it the channel from back here, which was channel. And then we just want to give it a limit so we don't get like all of them. Limit, let's do 10, save that. And then in the AI agent, we're going to just do an extra message here. And the message, so you don't have to watch me type and think about all of this. I've already done this ahead of time. We can just grab the message here. And this message is going to add to the first message. So the first message just says pretty much like, hey, here's the message that was the incoming one. This one then says, here's our past messages for reference. And all I did was take our message body, which I need to change this to messages. And this is just going to take the messages from the API request. Is going to give it a bunch of messages, and it's just pulling out the actual message, like the text within the message, instead of the full JSON array, and it just listing out message by message, and then just giving these like dotted lines in between each message. So OpenAI just looks at it as a history of messages with a message, and then dots, and then message, and then dots, and it knows what to do with it at that point. So if I were to click save on this, it now would make the request. It would get the channel, the last 10 messages. It would send all that to the agent, and then the agent has a little bit more history for it to make decisions based on. And then that's it. You truly have a full working AI agent with Slack and connected to Notion, and it is extremely powerful. So a couple gotchas and things to think about. If you're going to use Slack a lot, you notice that it's responding as me, which isn't really that cool. If you want it to respond as a Slack bot, I have a video on how to create that. So you can see I have this like super AI Slack bot down here. It can actually respond as that Slack bot. So you can see some past chats here I have with a different test. And the Slack bot then is, you can like design it. You can have its own logo. It's much cooler. I have a video on that. So go check that out if you're going to get advanced with this. The other piece is security. So with MCP, the one big issue with it, do I have this open still? The one big issue with it is you end up giving it access with these like capabilities of what's possible. And you can give it access on like the, what it has access to. So I gave it access to the test team space. But I found that with this one specifically, I could prompt around a little bit and I could actually get access to private information. So I didn't lock it down at all, but this is stuff that you want to be really conscious of when you're building production level MCP AI agents, because we've been finding that you ultimately can open it up too much, and you might have like a financial report in your Notion page, or you might not want all of your HubSpot contacts in your pipeline to be accessible to people who have access to Slack. With a little clever prompting, you can probably uncover some of that information. So keep that in mind when you're building your MCP AI agents. Other than that, hopefully this was helpful and you can see the power of MCP. And I simplified it a little bit so you kind of understand why we would use MCP and why it is an amazing invention in the AI automation space. And if you found value in this, please like, subscribe, and check out my next video.